All right, everybody, welcome to our next VSGI speaker series. So this time around, we have Robert from D-Box, who's going to talk to us about haptics and immersive motion in gaming. Very interesting topic, very cool stuff that they're doing over at D-Box. And we're looking forward to that. I want to make sure that if you haven't looked in the past, obviously, the speaker series has all of our old talks right up on the website, vsgi.gmu.edu/speaker-series. And we can put that in chat and we'll make sure that's available. But obviously, if you got here, you probably know about that site. We're also doing some talks with our Arlington campus, doing technology talks that are in person, and we'll try to put some information up about that as well. But right now, we're here to talk about what a lot of people don't necessarily think about when they talk about gaming, and that's the use of other technologies and the way you can make things more immersive and the way you can use these technologies to make things feel. And I'm really doing a bad job of selling that. So instead, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to turn it over to Robert so that you can go ahead and tell us all about the cool stuff that can be done and do a much better job of it. So again, this is Robert, and please take over and yell if you need anything, and I'll yell if I see anything. So it's all your show, man.
Just let me know if you see my slides.
I see them just fine. I can hear you just fine. You are good to go.
Excellent. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Robert Deshotel. I'm the CTO of D-Box Technology. I'll just give you a brief introduction of what D-Box is, and then we'll go to the subject, which is the use of haptic to improve the immersion in gaming. So who's D-Box? Like everybody knows us from the chair manufacturer that's in theater. We are not a seat manufacturer. We're a motion system designers and manufacturer. We do use our technology in theaters. So far, we have 19,000 seats around the world using our technology. But we also do training simulators for military, industrial, farm equipment. We do flight simulators or provide our motions with flight simulators. We do racing simulators also. We actually have professional pilots using our technology to train. And we are also known in the home systems, very high-end recliners for home theaters. And what might be interesting for you all is that probably around Christmas, we'll be announcing our first gaming chair with haptic feedbacks. And I'll show you a picture towards the end of the presentation. So that's what D-Box is. So a manufacturer. What's unique about us is we're about the only company in the world that is able to do everything from the motion design to distribution protocols, synchronizations, and then playback. So we do provide all the hardware and software in both modes. And when I talk about both modes is usually you typically talk about haptic feedbacks for linear. So let's say like when we present a movie in a movie theater, it's a linear content because usually you play and you'll go with it. And then we're also do interactive, like interactive VRs, obviously gaming, and all of the simulator and training technology is used with the same engines that we have. Just briefly, how the technology works, we have a software called Haptico that synchronizes, that create and generates the motion. So when it's linear, it's actually pre-designed and it's just synchronized. And when it's from a gaming engine, it's actually fully integrated in the gaming engine. We have our own hardware and actuators and ecosystems and servers that are making sure that the action and the haptic experience is perfectly synchronized. We're actually very picky with this, so synchronization needs to be, the latency needs to be not more than 50 milliseconds. And again, if you do have questions, you don't have to wait to the end, because sometimes you see something on a slide and you want to know more about it. So please don't hesitate to ask your questions. So with that, we're going to go in the subject of what is the haptic feedback. There's lots of different definitions, but really it's a feeling that we'll have that will support the video that you're seeing, the audio that you're hearing, and it's basically forces, vibrations, and motion. And the notion of motion is very important, and it's a key differentiator between native haptics and sound or audio-based haptic. So what I want to cover today is what is the haptic feedback for video games, the difference between native and audio-generated haptic feedback. Basically, when I talk about audio-generated haptic feedback is all kinds of buzzer shakers that people add to their seats or to their equipment that provides a vibration on cue. And I'll talk about the difference. We do create the native haptic feedback, and how do we think that it immerses the game? And I'll share some of those best practices with you. So the haptic feedback is really lots of differences, but like for D-Box, for the last 10 years, it's always been about full body seated haptic experience. Meaning that the seat will actually respond to the cueing and action and the impacts that you have while you're playing the game. So imagine yourself racing on a course on a Horizon or Project Cars. Well, in a D-Box seat, it will really mimic what you would feel like you were if you were in a car. So you will not only feel the turn, the G-forces, but like with the texture technology that we're having, you will feel what kind of road you're on. You will see if you're on cement, asphalt, if you're in the grass, if you're in the sand dunes. And that's what the pilots like about our technology. They're saying that in racing, you basically base your performance on what your butts are feeling. So you're racing with your butts more than anything else. And they like the feeling. They feel like if the brakes are failing, if there's something wrong with the tires, you really feel it. So it's really key for enhancing and immersing the gamer to have that full spectrum of frequencies that is being used. So if we talk about the differences, basically the most shakers, they will I'm sure you will all understand, it's all based on frequencies and playback of frequencies. A good, very good shaker will provide a range between, let's say, 20 hertz as the lowest to maybe 200 or 300 hertz. More than that, you'll start to hear the sound. It's really unpleasant. While the difference with D-Box is we go from 0 to like 120 and more with the harmonics. But like the difference is like from 0 to 8, it's really the motion. And then 9 to whatever is the vibration. So the difference in the seat, when you do provide the 0 to 8 hertz, you basically feel the seat move left to right, back to front. So you can imagine that in a game environment, if you have cueing that you have opponents, for example, in the back, if you have cueing that you've been hit from the left side, it basically takes you to a different level when you do this. The other thing that we could do is because we're totally integrated in the gaming engine, we can add things that are not related to the sound that you hear. For example, you're playing a first-person shooter game, you could feel the heartbeat or your heartbeat in your seat. So you don't have to look what's your life level. You basically just synchronize the heartbeat signal to your seat and you will feel it. So you can focus on the action and keep your eyes where it's important to be more performant in your game. So that's the basic difference. So two things. So we're not as limited in frequency response as the shakers, And secondly, we can drive more queuing based on things that have nothing to do with what you see or what you hear. One of the great examples that we had, and we enjoyed working with Ubisoft, they have a game called Eagle Flight. In that game, you basically use VR goggles and you're flying over Paris. Obviously, you just hear the wind. So if you have a shaker type of device or an audio-based DSP haptic system, you will just vibrate. Like with a D-box seat, for example, you turn, you feel the turn, you feel going up, you feel going out, going down. So you're really fully immersed. And on top of this, when you have a perfectly synchronized haptic support, it reduces by 80% the cyber nausea of VR. And if you're interested in that topic, we do have work with the Montreal University, and there's a white paper on this that I could give you the link if you want. So we do how do we get into games is we work with gaming studios. We have SDKs and what we call dev sims that are compatible to any gaming engine, including Unreal and Unity and Ubisoft. They have their own 5 proprietary gaming engines. So we're compatible with all of this. In some games like the racing games, for example, we capture all the telemetry and we render the telemetry live in real time. And some other games like the first-person shooter, we're basically creating a bridge between our motion engine and the gaming engine, and we can offer a very rich texture to the game designer. So that's how we do it for now. Because we've been doing it for 20 years, first in the movies and then in gaming, we have about 65,000 different waves, and those waves are used in a haptic haptic station, if you want, and we could layer all of those waves, different waves, and combine it, and we can make exactly the texture that you want. We do have experienced motion designers that are spending their days working on combining motion waves and audio waves and all of vibration to create the perfect experience. Like, for example, when you have a first-person shooter and you're firing a gun, for example, not only will you feel the gun, but you'll feel the recoil also. And all of those waves are combined to make the perfect experience. And so that's with our systems within gaming. We do provide the movement, the vibration, and the texture. For you're in a road, you're in a texture. If you're like underwater, you'll feel the texture, the bubble of air. You'll feel all of the little details, and it makes playing a game or a lot more immersive and or more enjoyable. So if we do have fun, we create the emotion and we have the intensity in our gaming platform. We feel that the customers are playing it again and doing it more. And one thing that I also wanted to share with you is, as you know, with the D-Box system, you have encoded games, which is the native mode. And we just also launched a new mode last month, which is called the adaptive gaming mode. What it does is the adaptive gaming mode will do 2 things. It will basically, on a PC, intercept all of these signals from any peripherals that you have on your PC. And you'll have default profiles provided by D-Box that are giving you, for example, you're playing a first-person shooter, will give you the basic of what the feedback or the haptic feedback should be. But the good thing about it is we built an interface where the gamer can go and customize. If you want to do extreme, you can like boost frequencies, boost the level, the intensity. You can change the frequencies used. You can make it really to your taste, and share it on a social media with your friends and compete to see who got the best profile. The problem with this is our employees are spending way too much time creating profiles now, but it's really interesting. And we're adding what we call adaptive audio mode, so that you have haptic feedback not only with what you do, but if you're being shot, for example, based on the sound and the encoding of the sound that we'll do in a real time, you'll see that you'll hear and you'll feel the action in the seat. And that's actually, I've been at D-Box for 11 years, and that's one of the most amazing product launch that we have. Obviously, to be successful, you need something to be able to play it on. And this is a preview. The company Cooler Master will launch a seat, gaming seat, probably just before or after Christmas. And you see at the bottom the haptic engine. It is the D-Box engine. It's fully integrated, and it will give you motion and all the vibration directly on a gaming seat. And so look for it. It should be coming to you really shortly. And you can already see preview videos of it, but like the first impression for influencers and people that tried it recently is quite amazing. You're having a very good experience, and it's a lot expensive than buying yourself a racing rig or a flight simulator. Best practices. Usually when we work with the gaming studios, we try to go with the artistic direction, but we're trying to push where it would make the player be more efficient and more enjoyable to play with. So really the immersion is really key for us. Like I said, you can integrate the heartbeat, you can integrate like detection, you can integrate when you have like opponents or enemies, the seat can tingle according to your liking. So you have like something that you feel that you can't hear or see yet because it's coming. So I think that we work really hard to create all kinds of new approaches to make sure that we improve the environment awareness and just don't play the game, just get in the game. And that's the 20-minute wrap up and that I had for you. And hopefully you'll have questions, and I'll be happy to answer any question that you have.
Well, I know I have questions. So if other folks have questions, you want to raise your hand virtually or whatever, or put it in chat, we can cover that. But I do have some questions. I'll go ahead and start. Is there temperature in the chair? That would be kind of cool. I assume you don't have it, but hot and cold in the chair, like a way to warm it or cool it.
Not yet, but we're looking at actually our technology is mainly used to control motion, vibration, and texture. But we have a capability to output to a DMX environment where we can control lights, fans,
that would be interesting,
cooling, and all of this. So like, yeah, but one thing that we have for gamers that's fairly easy for us to do is when you let's say play a tournament, you're really stressed and tired at the end. So there's a mode with the chair where you could do engage a frequency that would simulate relaxation. So basically it's a massage chair at the same time.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, no, thinking about all the things that could be added onto the chair is kind of interesting. So we'll start with the chair then. Is that PC only?
That's for now, it's PC only.
Okay, that's what I assumed based on what it was. Okay, that's very interesting idea. Now, I know you talked about, primarily being these kind of seated experiences. One of my questions is, obviously the seat can provide a certain amount of information and cues and do certain things for it. have you worked with companies, or have you implemented things where not only your haptics and immersion, but also work with other devices and peripherals? For example, both the PlayStation and the Xbox, for example, have controllers that can vibrate or rumble and things like that. And obviously, you can use those controllers on the PC. Have you worked on, integrating that along with what is happening with the chair? Or is it kind of the chair is your experience, and then you also, hopefully the developers do something with that too? Like,
it's an excellent question. We want to be the leader of haptics, and we realize that we can't do it selling our hardware. When I talked about the frequency response, 65% of the cost for any motion system that we have goes for that 0 to 8 hertz. So because we need to lift like 350 pounds at 1G, and it needs to be there working for like 20 years. So it is a very costly component. The value that we have is we have a huge library. We have over 2,500 movies or TV series encoded to date. Wow. And these codes are really optimized. And what we're working on now is a way to be able to connect that library to any device, but through profiles. So excellent questions. Obviously, we cannot be the leader if we're just sticking with the D-Box hardware. So we will be working with partners to extend our motion library to like the haptic headphones, cushions, pads, vests, controllers, and all of this for sure.
Okay. I saw a question in chat. I'll come back to that in a sec. I just wanted to finish up on what you just said, though. So you'd mentioned that adaptive gaming mode in profiles, and I just wanted to be clear for folks that are thinking about it. So is that saying essentially, let's say I have a game that doesn't use the D-Box SDKs, or doesn't have this programmed automatically to generate those kinds of things. It's just saying, look, I can pull up an old FPS, and as long as it recognizes what's going on, by sounds or other cues, then it can then trigger it? Or does it still have to be something that's D-Box set up?
No, it's actually a module that's been actually, like I said, launched last month. And for now we just launched it, and it's free. So what you could do is associate what you're playing with the type. You have like a menu, and this is a first-person shooter, or this is like a Assassin's Creed type of environment, and we create basic profiles for all the buttons on all of the controllers, and it's recognized. So we offer you a basic experience. But but the fun thing is, like, there is an application built in where you can go in and say, okay, the gunshot, I want to feel it more. And you can play with the frequency, the range, the intensity of every single cue or haptic feedback that you have, and make it your own. And
it's interesting, because that was actually the question in chat is, is there this, frequency or texture of of an impact of getting hit by a bullet, right? Like that feeling that, something's happening. Which it sounds like there are, and that you can modify that on the fly, even if it's not something already programmatically accomplished.
Yeah, for example, if you go first-person shooter, you'll go in a menu that's like guns, for example, and then guns, you'll have like, is it a shotgun, a automatic rifle, is it an handgun, and then so you could load the basic profiles, and then you can go in and modify them to your liking.
Gotcha. And I assume that if the game already had D-Box controls in it, it would just be like, oh, hey, we're going to give you this other experience because that's what they programmed, right?
Exactly.
So, okay. No, that's awesome. So one of my questions as you were going, obviously the seated experience, and what is nice is I think it was kind of cool because obviously the ones you hit on at first were, racing, flight simulators, things where we know you already have a seat, right? Like it
Yes.
makes sense because you're in a seat in the game or the simulation. That one-to-one thing makes super sense. And then you mentioned first-person shooters, where like now it's like how do we take a non-traditional game where you're using the seat to do this? And so I'll just go with the harder question. What's been the hardest thing or hardest type of game for you to kind of get developers to wrap their head around on how to use this kind of technology?
Games like Star Wars, Jedi Fallen or something like that, where it's not the usual, there's no revving of engine, there's no gunshots, there's no explosion, it's all lasers,
Right.
space vessels and all of this. So it's different. It's the same problem that we used to have because we're in theaters, we have to have the movies from the movie studios and manually encode those movies because they are showing. And we never have any problems getting, for example, the Fast and Furious, because that's a given, right?
Right.
But movies like, for example, Bohemian Rhapsody, the Queen movie, they said like,
Wow.
there's no gunshot. Yeah, but like, let us have you dance in your seat to the beat, right? And horror movies, when you use the motion and the vibration, in conjunction with the score of the music, the impact when you want to scare a person and your seat jumps,
right,
the people are jumping also. So we're trying to get out of the car mode only and get to we did Jurassic Park, the last Top Gun in D-Box is just phenomenal. So we're getting out. So it's the same thing with the studios. Let's say anybody who's creating a new racing game, the pitch is very easy to say, I'm in. Assassin's Creed, for example, the last one with Ubisoft was more of a stretch, but they're really happy that it did. Because it was like horses and like swords and
Valhalla was a very different.
Arrows. So totally different, but like the rendering that we worked with them to do the rendering, it was like quite interesting, and they liked it. So the non-cars are a bit more difficult to get, but I think that people are understanding it now better.
So there's a question in the chat that Jacob was asking. So there's headphones in the picture, which is obviously bringing audio too. And so his question was, if somebody's wearing headphones and using the chair, does that affect the audio frequencies from the chair? Or because you mentioned that some of them are audible and some of them are not, but most of them are used for motion or vibration. Does that experience change at all by the fact that you're wearing headphones or not when you're in it?
No, it doesn't, because the adaptive audio mode that I've talked about is actually not pass through. We're going to filter all of the voices, for example. We want to filter some unwanted frequencies, so it doesn't affect at all what you would hear in your headphones.
Gotcha.
And for serious gamers, also, you might know that Razer is also coming out with headphones with haptic transducers in them. So
interesting.
That's they had already a model out, and I think that they're launching another one. So it's quite interesting.
Gotcha. And I know you mentioned a few things in there near the end about designers and thinking about it, but in your mind, like some of our folks that are coming through our program, for example, and they're looking to go into the industry, and there's all these new technologies. There's haptic. Haptics have been around for a while. Don't get me wrong, but we're seeing more and more uses of them, just like we're seeing VR catch on to some degree, and newer technologies are hitting in new ways, and it's making us rethink what does the user experience include for that immersion, right? are there some best practices or things that you would think of, like, if somebody's starting to design their game, regardless of the genre, you know, at what point, or what thoughts or recommendations do you have about how to start to incorporate this in, as a whole part of the design process?
Yeah, it's something that we're working on, because like when you do a game or a movie, they do like the scenario, and now they started to integrate the sound design at an earlier stage, because
Yes.
sound is so much important now. And so we do have discussion with movies, with gaming studios, and gamers, to say like haptics needs to be done the same way. You need to think about it. It's good to do it in post-production, but it's nice if the director or the studio director or the game director will use that as a tool to enhance what he's trying to do. And I actually had that discussion with the studio yesterday, and we want to create forums and work groups so that we could try to define the language, if you want, of haptics when it comes to gaming and immersion, and make sure that there's like standards that is deployed. There is something called the Haptics Industry Forum, if you're interested in this. This is basically a group that has that basically facilitate work groups for its members, and actually I'm the chairman of the board of this organization.
Nice.
Worldwide. We just signed Logitech last week, so and we have a work group that we call creative content, and they're the one we're going to work with gaming studios to start think about how to define the language and the signature of haptic support within gaming. And interesting thing is that it was basically pushed by a gaming studio who wanted to use haptic, but wanted to know best practices. How do you push it? How do you make it compatible with, like, just not D-Box, but like every haptic devices out there? So it's really interesting.
No, I think that's great, because I think that a lot of these kinds of things really need that kind of support for them to take off well. Because it's one thing to make a game with a gimmick, right? Yes, we all know those, right? You went to the arcade and the games had motion, or they had this, and it was great. But the fact that, like you said, even that dynamic mode, right? Like being able to think about it as a standard, much like I know the accessibility folks now are working on standards for accessibility, and they're getting better across the board in games. But now imagine you take that to that next level of haptics and other forms of interfaces and things like that, and having those standards would be not only great for obviously your company, but for developers and things like that, because then it's like it's the minimums and the things that you want to make sure are accommodated to have the best experience without requiring them to completely rework their game. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, we did it for the movie industry because nobody else was doing it.
Right.
and simple standards, like you're in a car, you're turning left. And most people are the seat will go left also, but like if you're a real car, when you're turning left, you're going right because of the force that are being applied. And that's all the logic that you need. And you need to think about it. Like, for example, when we get movie in the old format. They still do reels, so they're 22-minute, even though it's digital now, but like we have 22-minute reels, and we have lots of motion designers, so we need to have standardization in the approach when we're encoding it, so that like reel 1 and reel 5, if there's a gunshot, you will not file like, whoa, that's really different. So and it's all a work of defining, structuring, and creating a dictionary, if you want, of the different haptic effects that you want. But when you think about it, if it's all based on frequencies, so it's basically unlimited what we could do as far as rendering the experience.
I mean, it sounds like especially with the movie industry, right? Like a lot of what you were doing is obviously after the fact, right? You're given these things to create an experience based on what they did. have you had some movie studios that have been receptive as far as like even planning how their shooting and stuff would be done, knowing that
We,
this was going to be something that was done to it?
yes, we were invited to participate in some movies. The one that was like the most fun for us is the last Goosebumps, where they wanted to create a something different in
Uh-huh.
VR. And so we had a meeting, and when they learned about our capability, they said like, well, we need to reshoot a scene. So they said
Hmm.
like, let's pick a date, and so we had to go on site with Jack Black and the shooting team, and basically dictate what kind of feedback we could do, and they basically filmed the clip according to our specifications. So that was really exciting. And the other thing that's exciting is now the movie director and some of the executives are coming to QC sessions,
Hmm.
and the record is 11 hours of QC for
Wow.
one of the first Minion movies. And it's not because they didn't like it; it's because they wanted more.
Oh, that's
They
funny.
they said like, no, it needs to move more, and then I want it to turn, and I wanted to, and so in real time we have a motion designers that leads the session, and
Wow.
we had lots of fun to play with the Universal folks
Yeah,
and
that's kind of funny because you mentioned Fast and Furious earlier, and you mentioned like Top Gun Maverick, which I still haven't
yeah,
seen, but sounds like a natural. But then now you're mentioning, no, here's the people like Goosebumps and Minions and
yeah.
kids, which kind of makes sense to some degree, right? They're more accepting of these types of things too. So that's very interesting. Okay. Anybody else has any questions? Feel free to ask them or raise your hand. I've noticed some in chat. I haven't seen any recently. I want to make sure we get to them all. I almost hit most of mine. I don't think I had anything else necessarily. It sounds really cool. Now, if you need testing on these new chairs, I'm sure we'd be willing to help out or order one and figure out how to get it in here. So
If you do have training, what we're trying to do is trying to get feedback. If we're going to
yep,
be launching with partners gaming seats,
yep,
we need to make sure that content will be
yeah, exactly.
relevant to the efforts, right?
Hmm.
So I think that if there's a possibility of having testers or people to basically give us their thoughts on what we
Hmm.
do and what we do good and what we do wrong, that would be very helpful. So
Yeah, we can talk about that. Yeah, and
yeah,
I'm thinking more and more like as we expand our own program, we want, and that's why we have these kind of talks, right? Is we want to start to incorporate more and more of these, like you were mentioning, as part and parcel of the design process, right? Like you should be thinking about all the things that we can bring to experience. Like when you were talking about the chair and the whole idea of being able to sense things, and I'm like, man, imagine the Spider-Man games that they had on PlayStation if they could do the spider sense as something
yeah.
that radiates out in the chair and makes you aware of stuff, not only on screen as a visual, but also a feeling. But yeah, imagine thinking about that and incorporating that. It's a crazy kind of thing. So, okay.
And I think that once we launch our module, like I said, to basically be able to drive any other device, but you know that all of the shakers are being driven by amplifiers, audio
Hmm.
amplifiers,
Yep.
right? So our idea is to be able to convert on the fly our
Mm.
motion code to a something that's similar to an audio signal that you can't
Hmm.
hear. Um,
Gotcha.
and you'll be able to test any devices, not only a debug seat, but any
Oh wow.
devices with this, including the PS5 controller.
Ah, okay. Very
Because on the
interesting.
USB connection, the
Yeah.
actuators are live. So, and that could be driven with haptic, uh, um, the debox haptic codes. So if you have people interested, definitely we should
Okay.
continue talking, because that's of great interest for us to get feedback.
No, absolutely. All right. Well, I don't see any additional questions. It looks like we got some people really enjoyed it, and I think people that are going to watch this later are going to really enjoy it. And I think it's a very intriguing topic. So thank you so much for coming out, Robert, and sharing with us and talking about it and answering questions. We really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. And if you have questions that we didn't have the time to cover, just you have my email, send email, and we'll stay in touch.
I will do that. If anybody reaches out either after or from watching the video and wants to contact you, I'll make sure they get in touch with you. So
excellent. Well,
awesome.
Thank you so
Thanks
much
so
for
much.
having me.
And thanks everybody else
keep
who
gaming.
came by.
Bye.
All right, take care. And I will stop recording.